This is the Adoptive Mom Podcast. Adoption may look different for each family, but we need solidarity from other crazy people who took this leap. And that is what we do here. We encourage, we build up, we share the wins and losses. We lean on each other, and we get through this together. Thanks for joining us. Hello. Welcome to episode 10 of the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I am Alex Fitton, and I'm so glad you're here. And I hope you'll excuse my sickly voice once again. I don't know what it is about being sick, but it always attacks my vocal cords first, and I sound like a crazy person for like 2 weeks. It's insane. Anyway, I'm so excited that you're listening, and if you have left me a review on iTunes, I'm really appreciative. If you haven't already, I would really be grateful if you would head over there, and even if you just leave a star review, that's fine, but I love hearing the words of people that love this podcast. So I want to read a couple more. Mrs. L.M. Lewis says, love this podcast, incredibly encouraging and insightful stories and truths on adoption. So thank you. Jo Beth Evans says, my husband and I are currently preparing to adopt older kids from foster care. This podcast has given me a lot of encouragement as well as prepared me for some of the good and not so good emotions that are going to come with adoption. Alex so far has given many different perspectives on adoption that really allows you to see the big picture. This podcast has played a very important role in my personal development as a future adoptive mom. Thank you so much, Jo Beth Evans. I love hearing feedback. So please, even if you don't have time to do that, you can just go over to my Facebook page and write me some words of encouragement or advice, or if you have anyone that you think should be on the podcast, let me know. I love hearing from you. But today, I have another awesome treat for you guys. We're going to hear from, not only is she not a mom, but she's certainly not an adoptive mom, unless you count cats, which we talk about a little bit in the episode, but we're going to get to hear from Brooke Schafer. She and her husband Luke are both teachers, but Luke is also a youth pastor at a church with an unusual ratio of biological families, and adoptive families. We have a lot of adopted kiddos in our youth group. And so they have made the decision that they're going to learn as much as they can and that they're going to walk alongside their friends through this and not just turn a blind eye to all the difficulties and struggles and hurdles that we adoptive families have to walk through. And I really wanted her to share her story and also give advice to the support systems out there who maybe just don't know what to do. And they have friends that are about to walk through this and they are scared or they don't know what this means for their friendships. So I'm so excited for you to hear from Brooke on this subject. On that note, let's jump right into my interview with Brooke Schafer. All right. Hey, Brooke, how's it going?
It's good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Did you, you had a long day of teaching those crazy kids?
I did. It was my A-day, so like every other day. One day I have a really easy schedule, and then the other days I go from like 7 to 5 just with kids. Wow, I'm talking to a mom, so I guess it's not really a big deal. But yes, it was a long day.
You say that, but I just don't really like kids that much. And I know that sounds ironic, but I really don't like other people's children all that much. So I have the utmost respect for what you guys do because I feel like I would just go insane.
Well, thank you. It's pretty fun, but there are days that I think that I'm going to go insane as well. And I like it.
So on that note, I'm sure that everyone's figured it out, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do and stuff like that, if anyone is still wondering what you do.
Well, I guess I can be more specific. So I teach 9th grade English at Fayetteville High School, and I coach 9th grade cross country girls, 9th grade girls track, and then I'm an assistant varsity coach, and I coach hurdles. Yeah.
So you just wear like one hat all day, right? It's no flipping around for you.
Oh my goodness. There's a lot, but it is on my easy days. I get to wear I don't have any English classes, so I just get to wear coaching clothes, and it's amazing.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Appreciate that aspect of it.
Well, and an interesting thing about you that is probably not necessarily a part of your story, but well, maybe it is. I don't know. But you were a college athlete, Miss Schafer, right?
Yes, it sounds a lot cooler than it was, but I did hurdle for the U of A for a little bit. I was a walk-on, It was really cool. I'm like no Olympians because of it, but I was not one of them. But it was, but it was fun. It was really fun.
That's super cool. So, okay. So I think that, I wanted to have you on for a reason that we will totally get to. But I think the kicker for anyone listening is that you are not only not an adoptive mom, but you are not a mom at all unless you count cats, right?
Right. Yes. We have 0 kids. We have 2 cats, but I think they're preparing us to be parents.
You guys are pretty cute with your cats.
Yeah. We love them a lot.
And what are their names again? And go ahead and give their full names.
Yes. Okay. So we have Fred Weasley Schafer, and he is a ginger cat. And then we have Albus Dumbledore Schafer. I would give the full name, but it's really long. Albus Dumbledore Schafer, and Albus is like just a little bit. He's a white kitty, so we named him after Dumbledore because Dumbledore has a white beard.
Of course. And,
yes.
I'm just now getting into Harry Potter, so me and you have had some fun conversations lately.
Oh, my goodness. I could talk about Harry Potter for hours. If you ever want to have a Harry Potter podcast, I will gladly join that as well.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Okay, so back to, so let's, I think that I want to hear your story, but I kind of want to hear it through the lens of what we're talking about, because the reason that I wanted to talk to you is maybe to give a little bit of your story of how you've walked with some friends and specifically with us through this adoption process. And, you've known us since before we even had Grady, which is our oldest biological child. And now Luke, your husband, is the youth pastor for our oldest adopted son, Clark. And so you guys have literally been with us through this whole process, and you guys have kind of just hit it out of the park as far as support systems go. And so I definitely wanted to talk to you because I know that there are a lot of support system friends out there that are like, my friends are absolutely insane and this is scary and I don't know where I fit in this, and maybe it's just that I don't fit in it. And you guys didn't do that. You looked at this and you were like, you know what, this is scary, but we're in this with you. And so I want to hear about, that story through your lens. But first, go ahead and tell us. So you're married to Luke, as I already said, and you guys have been married for how long?
It's been a little over 3 years. So we met our freshman year of college, the very end of our freshman year. And we were friends, definitely liked each other the whole time. And then we started dating our junior year and got married right after we graduated, the summer after we graduated. So, and that's actually, I think that's when we got engaged, we put our name in for like a discounted photo shoot with y'all. And
oh, yeah. It was a contest.
Yes, we won. And so I think that's when that was like the first time we had hung out with y'all. I mean, and it was like y'all taking our picture, and then y'all ended up doing our wedding, and I had to, you helped me coordinate some of this stuff. And so I think that's when we first started hanging out. Yeah.
And, yes. You kept us around, which is cool, even though.
Which is cool. Yeah. Can I talk about my view of adoption when I was growing up?
Absolutely. I want to hear all that. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So when just my childhood, there's this one family, and my parents, my mom was friends with the mom, and they did foster care. And it was just so unusual. I didn't know anybody else who did that. I don't even think I knew anybody who was, had been in the foster care system or who had been adopted. And so it was just such a unique thing. For me, I just thought it was not for most people, that only different people did it. And so that was my view literally until I started going to the Grove my junior year. And even then, I don't think that I really knew until we became friends with y'all and started, and y'all started y'all's, journey with that. So yeah, I just, and I guess I thought it was just for overseas things.
Oh yeah.
It's children overseas. I don't even think, I was so sheltered. I did not even know that kids were in needed to be adopted in the United States. Isn't that sad?
No, but I think I knew that there were kids that needed to be adopted, but I mean, that's more experience than I had because I didn't know anyone that was a foster parent when I was growing up. And so our first experience was really once we got married and we started looking at like, oh, this is what foster care is. I think I always knew it existed out there somewhere. So it's really cool that you got a little bit more of an up close experience with it. At least that you knew what it was and it was in your mind as you were becoming an adult.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. Just walking, with y'all, we were friends, like you said, before y'all had Grady. Then y'all had Grady, and I think, we would babysit for y'all. Luke and I would, and mostly me, but sometimes me and Luke. And it was like it went from Grady to all of a sudden babysitting 3 babies and then a teenager being there. Like, I don't even remember the progression. Like, I don't remember thinking, oh, it's now, 2 babies. I just remember, oh, Grady to 4 kids.
Yeah, I don't really remember that progression either. So yeah, it just happened.
Yeah, but it wasn't weird. I mean, it was like incredible and crazy, but it wasn't weird. I was just like, okay, yeah, I'll babysit.
Yeah. So, okay, maybe and that's great. So what, I know that there are other families in our church specifically, but just that in general that you guys know that have adopted. And I know Luke has other kids in the youth group that are adopted or in foster care. And so you guys have kind of had to become, just really, I want to say educated, but maybe that's not the right word, but it's like, just maybe,
aware.
Yeah, you guys have just had to face this and become super aware of what's going on in behaviors, because I'm sure that we are not the only family that has made desperate phone calls to Luke like, here's what you need to know before you see my kid tonight.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's hear about that a little bit. What are some of the maybe funnier or more interesting stories of how you guys have had to look this in the eyes?
Well, it's been interesting because every story is so different and every kid is so different. And that is what is crazy to me. Like, sometimes it's a seamless, easy transition. And sometimes it's not. It's a lot harder, and it doesn't seem to be going great. And so I think what's been cool for us is just to be there for all of those situations, not just the difficult ones, but also the ones that are going well. I'm trying to think of like funny stories. There's a girl who's on my cross country team, or was on my cross country team, and is in our youth group, who I don't think I knew was adopted at all. But it was cool to, as we got closer, it was cool to have that like dual relationship. Like, I see you at school and I see you at church. As we got closer, the story came out. And so I think that's been valuable, is like hearing the kids' side of it too.
Right.
What they've been through. And then,
well, and I'm sure they look at you guys and feel some safety, because I know just from Clark that safety isn't always there. People will make jokes, as kids do, about, oh, you're adopted, just as not even making fun of him. And then he has to turn around and be like, no, but I actually am adopted. And then they are so embarrassed because they were, making a joke out of something that was very real for him. So I'm sure that those kids feel such safety when they talk to you guys, or when they find out that you guys get it, or that you're not, weirded out or freaked out or whatever by their stories.
And I hope that's true. And I think I was thinking about this as I was thinking about just coming on and talking with you tonight about how it's just a lot of times I'm not scared of people's like messes, I guess. Like, it doesn't scare me that someone has kind of a crazy backstory or a difficult backstory. I think it used to. I grew up surrounded by people who were the same as me, and had the same kind of family, the same kind of upbringing, the same kind of life goals. And so just to go from that to where I am now, where I feel like that doesn't scare me to be around people who have a lot different stories than me. So I hope I'm a safe place for them to talk and to vent and to process things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been that for us for sure. I mean, I have to say that you guys are not, I wouldn't even say some of the few, but maybe some of the few friends that haven't adopted, that I still feel like you're going to believe me when I tell you these, these scary things, and you're not going to push me away because of it. And not only that, but you guys have offered to walk into the fire with us. And I mean, and again, for those listening, I'm not just talking about just being there if I need to call someone or if I need to text and ask for prayer. I mean, there's that for sure. But I think that for those listening that are in need of a good support system, or for those listening that are a support system, I want you, Brooke, to speak to them, because not only have you been there to pray, not only have you been there to field the venting calls, but you guys have kept our children overnight. You have, offered to babysit for a whole day before, just to give us time. You've babysat multiple times a week for us. You've brought us food. You guys have literally, you've walked into that fire with us. So what has that been like for you?
It's funny. When you asked me, I was super honored and super humbled, but I was like, me, really? Because it just seems so normal. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. I mean, there's so many times that Jesus tells us, bear each other's burdens, bear with one another in love, love your neighbor as yourself. It's repeated. And I think it's repeated. Okay, I'm an English teacher, so I'm about to go nerdy, but repetition, when someone repeats a phrase over and over, it's to emphasize a point. And so I think by repeating that command, Jesus is recognizing our nature, which is it's hard to do that. It is hard to continually walk with someone when a lot of it is hard, I think it's our natural response to maybe help once or twice, but then when it gets real heavy, to kind of, walk out and go back to our normal. But I think he's recognizing that, but he's saying okay, and who cares? Keep going. And so
yeah.
I feel like that, walking into the fire with y'all and just being willing to do whatever to be there in any and every circumstance, I really think that that's a reflection of Jesus in our marriage, because I don't think that that's necessarily easy or natural for anybody, but it's a command. It's a command.
Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a human tendency to be if I put some distance between me and the scary issue over there, then maybe it just doesn't exist, or I don't have to think about it. And I think that, something that's interesting about you guys is, like I said at the beginning, it's not just that you're not an adoptive parent, but you're not a parent at all. And I feel like that's interesting in and of itself, because even if even when we weren't adoptive parents and we just had the one kid, we had friends that didn't have kids that they even were just yeah, your life looks different than mine, so that means we're done here. And so I think that it's such a testimony that not only, you took it even a step further, but maybe speak to those people too, that what is it like to remain friends with people, and not even in a helping way. There are definitely times where we hang out with you guys and the kids aren't even a part of it, but that even though you can't relate with our immediate struggles from a personal standpoint, that doesn't scare you, and you still want to hang out with us, which is really cool. But like I said, there are a lot of your peers that don't do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's just, you just have to walk with your friends through different seasons. And so just because I'm not in the same season as you doesn't mean we can't be friends. Yeah, I might have to adjust my expectations or be more flexible or do things later at night, or, just adjusting and maybe being a little more selfless, because there's a part of you that a huge part of you that is now going to your kid, and so that would be ridiculous of me to expect our friendship to stay the exact same, but I think I'm willing to be flexible and to meet you where you're at, and just understanding that looks different every day, I guess. I don't know. I think it comes down to empathy, being willing to see from your perspective, someone else's perspective, and then taking that further and letting that become like an action, I guess. So putting myself in your shoes as a parent of 4 kids, 3 of them babies. Well, sorry, Grady, toddlers. Might be. That's a lot, and so I think just being willing to, I don't know, I think I'm like repeating myself, but being willing to be flexible, meet you where you're at, and understand that friendships go through seasons.
Yeah. Well, and I think you spoke well because I think you spoke well when you said that the reason for that was because it was a command of Jesus's, or because you've decided that that's important to you. And when I say you, I mean you and Luke, because obviously you guys are married, but this is not just your initiative. This is something you both do really well. And this is called the Adoptive Mom Podcast. So I thought it more appropriate to interview you, but
understand.
But Luke is definitely, kind of a baller at this too, especially with the whole youth pastor thing. Okay. So yeah, so let's, you said some of those flexibility in some of those circumstances. So I think that kind of bleeds into some of these questions that I have. And I want to know about some of those flexibilities. What's been something that's super interesting that maybe never occurred to you before that you've had to adjust to? It could be a situation or just, a disability that maybe you didn't ever think about before. What's something like that kind of hits you like, oh, this exists,
Yeah. Okay, might be funny, but just like kids in public and just them being kids in public, and not being like embarrassed. Is that like a good answer? Because that's very real for me. Like, I feel like being with my friends and their kids in public is something that I have learned to just not sweat and not be a big deal. But at first I was just like, oh my gosh, they're like screaming, or what, they're like pulling everything off the shelf. Why is this happening? And now just being like, okay, I'm just gonna go pick that up, So that, I know that's like sounds silly, but that has been a huge thing for me, is just like being chill about kids acting like kids in public.
Just taking the chaos as it comes.
Yes.
That's something that because even before I had kids, I was like that too. And now it's like, I just look around and try to look really pitiful, so maybe people feel sorry for me instead of being angry at me.
That is hilarious. It's just sad that's people's reaction, is being angry.
Yeah. No, and I used to be one of those people. It's like, really? Get your kid out of here. Why are they screaming? Yeah. Okay, so what has your experience... has your perception of adoption changed through this experience that you've had with families like ours and other families that that have adopted or are in foster care?
Oh, 100%, yes. In a lot of ways. One, just realizing it's not just for like other families. Like God calls us also to take care of the orphans. And so, just being reminded of that through y'all's faithfulness in this and of other families that we know. And then too, we want to adopt. We don't have our own kids yet, but we do want to to go through the training and open our homes and foster and adopt. Actually, I had a student who last year who went into the foster care system from some pretty traumatic circumstances, and I was really upset that I couldn't. And she had to move schools, and I was really upset that I couldn't open my home.
Yeah.
And so, and yeah, that was really sad, but that's, I mean, we do want to do that. And then also just being, my perception has changed in that, like, there's a huge need right where I'm at, which it's not cool that there's a huge need, but just me recognizing that. And that's, I mean, we would like to do local, state, Arkansas, foster and adoption. And so I think that my perception, like, there's a lot of really cool stories that come from it, but each one is different. And I think that's an important thing that I've learned. Just not expecting not expecting anything, but not expecting the same thing from everybody.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that what goes along with that is, this is something that for me personally, adoption seemed really pretty and beautiful on the outside. And while I knew in my naive mind, I was like, oh, I'm sure it's hard. It wasn't, I had no idea that it's such a broken situation and that beauty can come from that, but it starts from brokenness. And is that something that you realized as well through those different situations that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's something, I mean, that's a good point, but yeah, that's something I've learned. It's like, the kids are in foster care and need to be adopted for not good reasons, and so, I mean, just that brokenness and combined with, just our own brokenness. Yeah, it's messy. But I mean, God obviously works so well with our messes.
Yeah.
And I've seen all of that, I feel like.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So what do you think has been the most difficult thing about supporting adoptive families? And, you mentioned earlier just that Jesus commanded us to take care of the widows and orphans. And I think that it's such a testimony that a lot of people feel like, yeah, I'll do that in the future. But you guys have said, yeah, we'll do it in a very literal sense in the future. But until then, we're going to pour into other families who are doing it. Mm-hmm. And so what has been the most difficult thing about that? And I want to add on to that question, and maybe you could answer for Luke. What maybe has been the most difficult thing about what he's had to learn about how to approach these kids in their hard situations?
Well, I kind of talked about this earlier, but just like our nature. So I was thinking about this, like what is the most difficult part? And, I think about, like, we've had Hurricane Harvey and Irma come through, and it's like, immediately everyone's giving, everyone's praying, everyone's concerned, and it's been a couple of weeks since Harvey, and it's like the world has moved on, and those people are still hurting, and those people still lost their homes, but like we've moved on. And so I feel like that, I mean, that's just our tendency, is to do that, is like, okay, I've served them, now back to my normal, and I'm going to, distance myself, like you said. And so instead of, and so I think the most difficult part is just fighting that. Like, no, this work doesn't end. Like, loving my friends doesn't stop. But I wouldn't say that it's been super difficult. It's just something that I'm aware of, and that, like, I just pray through, like, not to be selfish.
Yeah. Like intentional consistency.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's so easy to, just get in the flow. And I think you and Brian are so good at being intentional. Don't know how y'all do it, but I feel like y'all are very, very good at that. So thank you, because this definitely goes both ways. As much as, like, Luke and I have been there for y'all have been there for us. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, of course. I think that it's hard because we're the type of people that we love having people over and we love having people in our house, but it's hard to ask people to come into the circus, if you will. And we're like, we promise that after 7 we'll be fun people again. But until then, you're just going to have to hang with us.
That is, hey, your kids are fun too. Y'all are more fun. Y'all are the hip, cool ones, but your kids are fun.
Well, thanks. They're crazy, but they're, oh, goodness. And your family has kind of adopted Jane, which I think is adorable.
Oh, my goodness. They're obsessed with her. Anytime she's in the greenhouse or greenhouse is our church's children's ministry. And so I work in the baby room and Jane's still in there. So is Rock. But I'll send pictures of Jane to them. They love her.
Well, and Jane only lets Brooke hold her when Brooke's back there.
Yes. So perks of babysitting the Fenton kids a lot is that they love you over everybody else in the greenhouse. And Jane is a hot commodity in there. I'll tell you, everybody wants to hold her. She only wants to be, and I feel very loved when that happens.
Well, and this is a total side note, but it's a funny story. So Luke, Brooke's husband that we've been talking about, and one of his youth kids actually both really love Grady. And so one time, I don't know if you remember the movie Air Bud, but in that movie, they have this kind of standoff where the kid's on one side and the old owner that was abusive to Buddy was on the other side, and they call him to see who he'll come to. And so Luke and Grant did that, and Luke won. Grady went to him instead of Grant. So it was just pretty funny.
Yep, we love the Fenton kids, and I think that they love us.
Okay, so what about the second part of that question? What do you think has been the most difficult thing for Luke? And you can even use Clark as an example. You know, I've talked about him on this podcast, and I think he's cool with that. But, you know, I know that Luke's had to break up some play fights that went too far, and he's had to have some difficult conversations. So what do you think has been the most difficult thing for him in learning to approach these kids?
Well, I think it's been just creating emotional boundaries for himself. Luke is one of the most loving, loving, trusting, inviting people that I know. Sorry, I'm an English teacher, but I still mess up.
You spent all of that energy in class today, so you're good.
Yes, I did. So I think I didn't know if it was going to come up, but I did want to say, there's a time when it seemed like the information, things that were being, the vibe that was being communicated to Luke was different than, what was actually happening, and so I think learning like that, I think that hurt him. I'm not being very clear.
No, but I think I get what you're saying, that maybe he's had to learn, and that's a perfect answer to this. He's had to learn about some manipulative behaviors, and all the adoptive moms listening know exactly what that is. We have our performing kids that can make themselves seem really well behaved and really trusting, and it hurts us parents when we try to talk to people and they're like, oh, I just can't imagine that happening. And so I think that that's a great answer, that maybe Luke's had to learn to see past some of that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something we both learned, was to believe your friends who you have known and listen to what they're saying and trust them. It's hard. It can be hard because the kid that you see and the way they act when you see them can be totally different than what your friend is telling you is happening in their home. And so it could be hard to reconcile that.
Yeah.
And figure it out. But then it's we were no, these are some of our best friends. Why they wouldn't make this up. It's obviously true. And so I think that was hard because it hurt. It hurt Luke, to know that he was being manipulated.
Yeah.
And because Luke is he's so real and vulnerable and honest, and so for someone to not be that way with him and to totally deceive was hurtful. And so I think that was that was hard. That was really hard.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good one. And this reminds me of a specific story that I have regarding Luke and Clark. So one time Clark ran away, and Luke came up from Fayetteville to Rogers at 9:30 in the evening to help us look for him. And it was cold outside, and he would only get in the car with Luke. And after about an hour of them being gone, I called Luke, and I was like, oh crap. And so I called him. I was like, you need to know that this is feeding him. This is feeding that manipulation, because he thinks that he's getting one over on you. And I could tell it just didn't make a lot of sense to Luke, but I'm really grateful that he seemed to believe me, and he brought him home, and that was good. But I think maybe that does make a little more sense to him now since that happened. But
yeah. Sure.
But that's another great example of the way that the Schafers are kind of ballers at this, that Luke would drive up, 30 minutes away from his house on a weeknight to drive around in the freezing cold looking for a kid on foot in the dark.
Well, I mean, Luke rocks, but I mean, that's just that's what you do. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
That's what should do.
So
that's what, sorry, no, I was going to say, that's what brothers and sisters in Christ should do. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say that kind of leads into my last question here. So if you could sum it all up, what's your biggest piece of advice or encouragement for friends of adoptive families who need support?
Yeah, I have two things. So I've been thinking about this, because there's a lot of things you could say, but I really did think about this question a lot. I think the biggest piece of advice that I would have is just to empathize. Put yourself in that family's shoes and imagine if you were in their shoes, what would you need? What would you want your friends to do for you, or say to you, or act, for you or toward you? And then let that lead you to an action, so maybe instead of just saying, hey, do you need anything? 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be no, because I don't know. I mean, if someone texted me that, I would most likely feel like a burden if I actually said, yeah, can you do this for me? So maybe saying things like, hey, let's hang out this week. I'm free on these nights. Hey, I want to bring y'all dinner. What night works this week? So things like, it's like, I'm doing this. You don't have an answer. You don't have a choice, but just give me a time that you're free. And I think that I think that's helpful. And so I think it just starts with putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, or in just that family's shoes, and imagining what they need, or what you would need if you were in that situation, and then doing that. And then my second thing is y'all aren't a charity case. And so just be a friend, be a friend. I was thinking about how you've been reading Harry Potter, and I love Harry Potter so much. And so we just came over one night after the kids went to sleep, and we watched the 3rd Harry Potter movie and hung out. I wasn't trying to serve y'all or, fill a need. It was hey, we're friends. Let's just hang out. And so just be just be normal. And I put normal in quotation marks, because what is normal when you have, a bunch of kids and working on that, but just be a normal friend and go hang out and make time to see them without kids. I think that's important too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's good. I'm glad you said that, because I was actually going to say that was one of my favorite things that you guys have done, is that and I said this at the beginning, that you haven't been afraid. You haven't been oh, I'm sure they're too busy, or, oh, their lives just look too messy for us right now. Maybe we'll be friends with them when their kids are a little older, or whatever. You guys have been no, sure, we'll come over and have pizza at your house and just hang out. And that, it makes us feel so much more normal. Oh, we still have friends that don't have kids, and we can still relate with them. And it's just, that's, we have a supper club, us and the Schafers and 2 other couples, and we're the only couple that actually has kids, and we love it. We love that we get to feel like we still belong in those situations, that we're not just defined by, the people that have a bunch of kids.
Right. And I think that's another thing, don't be afraid of messiness. I think Jesus does incredible things when messy people our friends, like, and we all are messy. And so I just don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to ask questions and talk and just get close to those people. It's not scary. It's not.
Yeah. Oh, and that's good. And I want to specify that, I mean, Luke and Brooke are great with kids, but those people that are just like, oh, those people are definitely just so great with kids. They're meant to have a bunch of kids. And it's not, I hope you don't see this as insulting, but more of an encouragement to friends. Like, it's not like you guys just like ooze the, you guys don't look like just those kid people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that that's more of a testimony that this isn't just for those people, that anyone can be good friends or be a good support system for people. You don't have to just really be a kindergarten teacher and have this big heart for kids.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we both are better with older, obviously I teach high school, babies and younger kids can be intimidating, but once you're in there, no, they're not. They're awesome.
Yeah. Oh, this is such good stuff, Brooke. Thank you so much. And so I want to know, I think that everyone's wondering, where can we follow the adventures of Fred and Albus?
You can find that on Brookie Schafer on Instagram, which is BrookieSchaf. My husband has always been Luke Schafer, and so I tried to do Brooke Schafer, and that was taken, so Brookie Schafer it is.
I think it's pretty cute. It rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I like it. I've grown to like it a lot. So, yes.
Yeah, well, cool. And that's, it's not Bluke, which is your celebrity couple name that you're not a huge fan of.
I do love Bluke. No, I do love it. It's grown on me. That was our wedding hashtag, was Bluke Wedding, because I was just rebelling against the cute, clever hashtag. So I was like, I'm going to make mine as like bland as possible. So
we were just before the wedding hashtag craze, but I think the other suggested hashtag for you guys was Schafe the Date, right?
Yes, it was Schafe the Date, and we ended up with Bluke Wedding,
which I love. It's perfect.
I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Brooke. I know that I don't know. I know that you guys don't feel like you rock at this stuff, but you really do. And I really wanted my listeners to hear from someone who's getting it right. And that's totally all God. And I just wanted them to hear you and how it's maybe not as scary as it looks, or even if it is, how you brave it anyway. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was cool. And I was very humbled and honored that you asked me. It's pretty cool.
Of course.
Would it be okay if I prayed over the people who listen to this?
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Okay, sweet. Hey, God, thank you just that you have a heart for orphans. I mean, you adopted us into your family, and we were so far from you, God. We were your enemies, and you said, no, I want you to be my son and my daughters. And I mean, that's just humbling, and I'm very thankful for that. And I just want to pray over, one, the moms, the adoptive moms who are listening, God, that they would feel just reaffirmed in what you have called them to do, and that they would just feel your grace, that they would feel your love and your just blessing on them and what they're doing. And I pray that they would find community in this. I pray that you would bless this podcast and that it would reach a lot of people and that your name would be made great from it. And God, I pray for the support systems, the friends of adoptive moms, God, that you would give them a courage to walk into these lives, the lives of the adoptive families around them, willing to bear one another's burdens and willing to bear with one another in love, willing to love their neighbors as themselves. They would do so humbly and just asking you for wisdom along the way. We love you, God. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thanks, Brooke. You're the best.
You're welcome.
Yay. Okay. Have a good night. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Adoptive Mom Podcast. I know this stuff is hard, and I hope you found encouragement here. Remember, you are enough, and you're doing a great job. God wants to be at the center of this journey, and He is big enough to redeem all of our mistakes. Don't forget to check out show notes and other resources at theadoptivemompodcast.com. Thanks again for listening.